Hey team, I've been wanting to do this video for a while now, and with the cold temperatures, if you watched my last few videos, it's been getting harder and harder to actually articulate very well outside in the snow. So I thought it was a good time to do this video I've always been wanting to do inside. It's come together. It's gonna be awesome. Let's go. How to run like an artist.
1, 2, 3, 4. I was born to run to.
Easy, light, smooth, fast.
So my goal for this channel has always been to put out a running channel that's different. First and foremost, that's the priority. It might always be good, might be kind of spontaneous at times, but I've always wanted to blend kind of training content, coaching content, racing content with the idea that running is a form of art and that everybody can kind of be creative in their own way with running as their own form of art. And that's what I wanted to kind of come across today. So that's what this one's all about. So here we go. So right out of the gate, I want to talk about source material. Many artists use source material. And one of my favorite artists of all time is Jean-Michel Basquiat. And one of his source material was a book on symbols. And he actually had this book, it was just full of symbols and the meaning of the symbol. For example, he would just use a symbol like that in some of his art. So that book was his source material for his inspiration in a lot of his artwork that he did in the 80s. Another good example, when Chris and I wrote Born to Run 2, our source material was a cookbook and a recipe book in old school magazines. We wanted the look and feel and the vibe of every page as an experience. Kind of like a cookbook and a recipe book where there's a picture on each page, or like old school magazines. Again, that was our source material. So as runners, what is our source material? Well, I think it's our body. We begin to learn about our body. Maybe we follow a training plan. Maybe we have our watch that gives us data. That data is our source material. And if we also look at how in the type of running we do, whether it's a certain race distance, maybe our source material becomes to learn more about our body. We start to experience a lot of different distances. If you're a marathoner, maybe, hey, we look to do all different types of distances, similar to Kilian Jornet, who races every type of distance. That's giving us experience. That's giving us source material for us to learn more about what really inspires us as runners. The more we stay close to the vest and the more we do the same thing all the time, we lose out on gaining other experiences that could provide source material to go into being a little bit more creative with our running, but more importantly, using that source material or our body's experience to learn what we really, really enjoy about running. Okay, number 2, like I said, I wanted this to be kind of like a guide, so I'm going to kind of do it in steps. So our number 2 category is steal like an artist. Picasso once said, good artists copy, great artists steal. So let's look at Led Zeppelin. Maybe one of the, considered one of the best hard rock blues band ever. Who hasn't heard Stairway to Heaven, right? Back in the day, not only were they the biggest band in the world at the moment, but they were also accused of stealing and ripping off of older music and making it and infusing it into their own music. They were, I think, if I'm not wrong, they were taken to court several times for actually stealing and copying old music. Look at the Ramones. Who did they want to be? They wanted to be like the Beatles, actually. And that's where the name Ramones came from. The Ramones name was the incognito name Paul McCartney used signing into hotels, so people didn't know it was Paul McCartney. So the Ramones called themselves the Ramones because they wanted to be like the Beatles. They were stealing the Beatles' name in a way. So what are the Ramones known for, though? Were they the best musicians ever? No, they're probably the worst musicians ever. And did they ever sell a lot of records? No. But what they did do is, the joke goes, of those 2,000 people that were at that gig that night, 1,000 of them started a new band. So they were truly inspirational in inspiring other kids to start rock and roll bands, because they made it seem possible. If they're up there on stage doing 3 riffs, well, I can go do and learn that. They were maybe one of the most seminal, inspirational bands ever. So how does this relate to running? How do we steal something to infuse it into our running? Well, it's looking at maybe a runner that you admire in the space. Maybe it's a professional runner. Maybe it's someone that lives near you. Maybe it's a run buddy that you really truly admire and would like to be like. Start looking at their traits. Why do you admire them? So when I first got on this path of coaching, I really looked to reading a lot of books on Bruce Lee, because not only was he a good athlete, but he really blended in his ability to coach other folks in martial arts. He was involved with making movies that infused his philosophy as a martial artist. So I really like that idea of blending who you were as an athlete and who you were as a teacher and a coach. And that was really inspirational. So books out there, if you don't have that one athlete, turn to books. Another one of my inspirations, Goran Kropp. He lived in Sweden. So he rode his bike from Sweden to Kathmandu, ditched his bike, hiked to base camp of Everest, and then summited Everest, back down, picked up his bike, and biked all the way home. So I just loved that story. That was back in the 90s, and it was really kind of an inspirational story that running could be more than just either fitness or racing for me, but it could also be adventure. So find this person, this book, whatever it is that really inspires you. And again, do a deep dive as to what inspires you about that. What is the ethos behind that person or the book or the story or the way of maybe looking at your running. And this has nothing really to do with ability. Instead of looking at an athlete purely from their ability, look at the athlete of how they carry themselves, how they live their life, what makes them good. If they are a professional athlete and a high level performer, what is it that makes up their high level of performance? And 9 times out of 10, all those traits that make up an elite athlete that we maybe look up to or strive to be are trainable in our own way. Is that, again, yes, genetics, yes, ability goes into it, but for them to go to their best, it's all the little things that they do that we all can do. I think that's what's powerful in examining and stealing what they're doing. And as you begin to examine this athlete, their traits, it leads us to the next step in our guide to running like an artist. And that's having a message or a way or a why for your own personal running. And I'll use myself as an example. It was way back. I developed 3 words that had to exemplify everything I did as a runner and or as a coach. And those words were participation, health, and adventure. And whenever I'm posed with a project or a business opportunity or my running itself, I always ask myself, does this opportunity fall into one of those categories? And if it doesn't, I probably won't do it. But if it does, if it's a form of an adventure or it has something to do with participation and inspiring others to participate, or if it's just health in general, that's my guide to helping me with my why and making decisions as to why I may or may not choose to do something. So it really truly is my why. And then this why becomes really crucial, because I often tell my athletes, You know, sometimes I'll hear from them and say, hey, you know, they had to skip a workout, or they couldn't get the workout in on Sunday or Saturday. They had family obligations. And I said, yep, you just got lifed. Life gets in the way for all of us. And so when we get stuck or we get lifed, it's easy to let that get us off our momentum or our flow, which we'll talk about in a minute. But having that why may help you get right back on the bike again and get back into the groove if you've had to miss that workout. Or it could go as to, if you have that bigger why, that reason for the day-to-day operation of your running, so to speak, it may say, hey, today I've got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get my run in because I know I'm going to get lifed later in the day. So it really, again, just like my 3 words, it gives you that purpose. It gives you that driving force for the day-to-day that will help you remain the person you want to be within your own running and the artist and the creativity that you want to put into it. And being a good athlete and being a good artist is all about flow, staying in the groove, keeping the momentum going. Is again, we've all experienced of having to take time off. And as much as we put into our running before that time off, it's hard to get back into it. So having that why helps us stay into the groove and helps us keep the flow and the momentum going. The moment you stop judging your goals, it's the moment that you open yourself up to flow. And this leads us into the next segment of mastering your flow and your momentum. And in the music industry, they joke that you always keep the tape running, because if the tape keeps running, you stay focused, you stay in the moment, you stay in the groove, you don't let your guard down, and you keep going, you keep going. You'll often also hear good writers where they get in the practice of just writing every day. Whether it's good or not, they just write every day. And it starts to create this flow, this momentum, this muscle memory. So some tricks to keep you in the flow and keep the momentum going for your running is to be organized, to plan ahead, to know when those opportunities to get lifed are coming up so you can get up an hour earlier to get your run in. So just being organized and planned throughout your week, looking ahead of what you have planned the next day so you can plan your fueling, your nutrition, other obligations, and so you know when you're out that door putting foot to the pavement or the snow. And I think part of what goes into organization and planning also goes into stating your intentions to family members of what your goals are, so they know your intentions and they're buying in and they're part of the team. I think that goes a long way to creating a cohesive team at home for when those times where things get stressful or it gets busy. Everybody knows the intention, everybody knows the plan around your why. And to keep the momentum going, I often encourage runners to think about doing less more often. Sometimes we get stuck in thinking we've got to go out for that hour run all the time, and when we don't have time for that hour, we don't go out at all. But if we take on this philosophy of doing less more often, it keeps us in the flow. Another thing that keep us in the flow, keep the momentum, sometimes, especially if we're doing a new adventure or maybe upping our distance, we're getting really excited about our running and we're seeing it too short term, and this kind of can force us into going too big too soon, which, you know, I'm all for adventure and all for going big, but a common product of going too big too soon is then you need more recovery, or you get burnt out and you take a lot of time off that causes that flow to get disrupted and the momentum to stop. And then you start to lose that focus of your why, and things just start to get kind of wonky in your head. It kind of messes with you. So look and try to avoid going too big too soon, so you avoid needing to take a lot of time off. It's a common thing I see happen. People get excited about going ultra, okay? And they, instead of doing 100 miler, they do 3. And lo and behold, a year later, they're burnt out and they have to take a lot of time off for a variety of reasons. And it even happens in the pro ranks, okay? So really watch yourself of going too big too soon and avoiding having to disrupt the flow and the momentum. Okay, so now we know how we want to be as a runner and as an artist and how we're going to blend this. We know our why. And so now we have to memorize and internalize and visualize. If we look at any good guitar player or piano player, being a good player requires muscle memory. You begin to feel the notes, okay? It's not just where are they, you just know what that feels like to hit a G or a B or an A minor, okay? It's muscle memory. As an athlete, our form of muscle memory comes in 2 ways. It becomes in training skills, whether it's run form or strength, and also through training our brain and visualizing. Science has proven visualization affects the mind no differently than if it actually happened. And so this is our way as an athlete, as a runner, to create muscle memory for our brain. And if we start to visualize how we want to be, seeing ourselves perform and be and living our life just like how we want to be, just like that athlete that we want to emulate, and our purpose for running, this creates that muscle memory through time of how we start to treat ourselves and training our brain no differently than training a muscle to start living that way. And it becomes second nature. It becomes no different than training to get faster and stronger. I have my athletes every day do a journal of their workout. They reflect on how the workout went and they just write it down in their own way. This allows them to reflect, but it begins to help them visualize what they need to do during the workout that will then help them reflect and go and journal. So journaling and visualization go hand in hand. And journaling, writing down what you experienced from your run, helps us to learn about ourselves. It helps us to learn and to be more creative in continuing to further that flow and the momentum. And it gets us excited about a run project or a goal that we have coming. And the powerful and potent part of this is that learning about yourself continues to get you inspired and excited about what's next. And that's the important part. That's what helps us to continue to have this inspiration year after year. As we get older, as we get maybe a little bit slower, we can always have this inspiration of creativity that we can infuse in our running that is more about who we are as a person and as a runner, that has nothing to do with performance, that allows us to get excited about our running for the rest of our lives. And that inspiration will always be with you. And that's the fun. That's where the creativity comes in. And that's where you can continue to strive for more fun projects and always be inspired with your running. And through this process and through this inspiration, we start to realize that this creativity, this form of art and mastery allows us to not put so much emphasis on whether we can achieve a goal or not, but it's the fun, creative process that goes into doing something you don't think you can do that becomes the magic. And that ultimately is running like an artist. All right, team. Thanks for watching. Over and out from home in Jackson Hole. But first, before I sign off, I think it'd be fun if everybody puts down in the comments below who's inspiring you and what your why is for your running and your artistry. So thanks again for watching. See you guys next time. Later.